Another Day, Another Story. From Thomas Edison to MTV, the music video's long history. Before the rise of music television in the 1980s, music videos existed in various forms, albeit not as prominently or widely distributed as they would become later. Here's a brief overview of the history of music videos before MTV. Welcome to Tabo Eminent Channel. Theatrical shorts. In the early 20th century, before the advent of television, theaters would often show short films or short subjects before the main feature. Some of these included musical performances or dance routines, essentially serving as precursors to music videos. These shorts were popular in the 1920s and 1930s. Soundies. In the 1940s, a precursor to music videos called Soundies gained popularity. These were short musical films, usually featuring jazz and swing bands, that were shown on coin-operated machines in bars and restaurants. They were one of the earliest forms of music videos and provided a visual element to music. Promotional films. In the 1950s and 1960s, artists began to create promotional films to accompany their songs. These films were not widely distributed but were used as promotional tools for radio play and were sometimes screened in theaters. The Beatles were among the first to use this approach, producing promotional films for songs like A Hard Day's Night and Help. TV variety shows. Music performances on television variety shows were also a precursor to music videos. Artists would often perform their songs on shows like The Ed Sullivan Show in the 1950s and 1960s. These performances were recorded and sometimes reused as promotional clips. Concept videos. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, some artists started experimenting with more elaborate and conceptual music videos. These were often artistic and abstract in nature, such as the Beatles' Strawberry Fields Forever, and David Bowie's Space Oddity. Experimental films. Some avant-garde filmmakers, like Kenneth Anger and Stan Brakhage, experimented with combining visuals and music in the 1950s and 1960s. While not traditional music videos, their work influenced the visual style of future music videos. It's important to note that these early forms of music videos were not as accessible or widespread as they would become with the launch of MTV in 1981. MTV revolutionized the music industry by dedicating itself entirely to music videos, making them a central element of pop culture and a crucial promotional tool for musicians. MTV's success paved the way for the music video industry as we know it today, with music videos becoming an integral part of music marketing and expression. 1895, the first music video is filmed at Thomas Edison's studio. The oldest known film with music was made for the kinetophone, a device developed by Thomas Edison's lab that showed moving pictures and was also fitted out with a phonograph. In the film, its inventor, William Dixon, plays music from a popular operetta on a violin as two men dance beside him. The soundtrack was recorded separately on a wax cylinder that went missing for several decades, turned up at the Edison National Historical Site in the early 1960s and was finally reunited with the picture in 1998. Intended primarily as a test, the Dixon experimental sound film, as the clip is known, was not released, in part because the kinetophone never caught on with consumers. Early 20th century, illustrated songs capture moviegoers' eyes and ears. First introduced in 1894 as a publicity stunt for marketing sheet music, illustrated songs consisted of photographic images painted in color and projected from glass slides, sometimes interspersed with silent moving picture clips. Audience members in vaudeville houses and Nickelodeons would watch these visual displays as pianists and vocalists performed corresponding music, usually before silent films started or during reel changes. 1920s. Sound on film ushers in the era of musical shorts. In April 1923, New York City's Rivoli Theater presented the first motion pictures with sound on film, a system that synchronized movies and their soundtracks. The Jazz Singer, the first full-length talkie in cinema history, would premiere in 1927 and use the same technology. Many early sound-on-film productions featured vaudeville stars, opera singers, bands and other popular musicians. Known as musical shorts, these clips were played before feature films well into the 1940s. Later, during the 1950s, musical shorts made a comeback as filler footage between television movies, which were not yet edited to fit into time slots. 1925. Audiences learn how to follow the bouncing ball. A year after their animated sound-on-film series entitled Song Cartoons debuted, brothers Max and David Fleischer released a cartoon featuring a bouncing ball, which hopped over lyrics to encourage in-theater sing-alongs. Musical cartoons with bouncing balls later became common elements of children's television programs. 1940-1946. Soundies put coins in jukeboxes across the United States. Direct precursors to the music video, Soundies were 3-minute films featuring music and dance performances, designed to display on jukebox-like projection machines in bars, restaurants and other public spaces. Many of the era's greatest talents, from jazz singers and swing dancers to chamber musicians and comedians, appeared in them. Another type of visual jukebox, known as the scapatone, originated in France in the late 1950s and enjoyed some brief success in Europe and the United States. 1959. The Big Bopper coins the term music video. According to some music historians, singer and songwriter Giles Perry Richardson, who went by the Big Bopper, became the first person to use the phrase music video in a 1959 interview with a British magazine. Richardson died that same year in the plane crash that also killed Buddy Holly and Ritchie Valens. The Chantilly Lace singer is also credited with making some of the earliest known rock videos in 1958. 1960s. The Beatles marry movies and music. Perhaps more than any other band before them, the Beatles harnessed the power of film to market their records and express themselves as artists. In addition to starring in full-length features such as Help and A Hard Day's Night, the Fab Four recorded dozens of promotional clips, some with narratives and others composed largely of psychedelic images, that were broadcast in their native England and overseas. Many rock and roll bands of the late 1960s and 1970s followed their lead, releasing increasingly sophisticated promo films that shared the lineup with live performances on televised music variety shows. 1974. Australia paves the way with Countdown and Sounds. Two weekly teen-oriented music programs premiered in Australia in 1974. Both prominently featured music videos, some of which were created especially for the shows. As Countdown and Sounds quickly earned a devoted following, the format spread to other countries around the world. In 1978, 3 years before MTV hit the airwaves, the American program, Video Concert Hall, began offering several hours of unhosted music videos every day on the USA Network. The rise of scapatones in Europe. While the United States had Soundies and promotional films in the mid-20th century, Europe had its own precursor to music videos in the form of scapatones. These were short, jukebox-style films that featured performances by popular artists of the time. The scapatone machines were introduced in France in the early 1960s and quickly spread to other European countries. These machines allowed patrons to select a song from a menu and watch a short film of the artist performing the song. The films were shot in vibrant color and often featured catchy choreography and unique settings. One of the most famous scapatone artists was France's own Serge Gainsbourg, whose songs were accompanied by visually captivating scapatone films. These films added a new dimension to the music experience, giving audiences a visual interpretation of the song's lyrics and mood. Scapatones played a significant role in the promotion of music and helped establish the connection between music and visual storytelling. They were a precursor to the music video revolution that would later sweep the world with the advent of MTV. In fact, some artists and filmmakers who worked on scapatones would go on to create music videos in the MTV era, drawing on their experience in crafting visual narratives for music. Although scapatones were eventually phased out as newer video technologies emerged, they remain an intriguing chapter in the history of music videos, demonstrating that the marriage of music and visuals was a concept with global appeal long before the rise of music television. The Beatles' Magical Mystery Tour, 1967, a pioneering visual album. In 1967, amidst the cultural revolution of the 1960s, the Beatles released a groundbreaking project that could be seen as a precursor to the concept of visual albums, Magical Mystery Tour. Magical Mystery Tour began as a television film project. The Beatles, inspired by their interest in experimental cinema and the psychedelic movement of the time, decided to create a surreal and avant-garde musical film. They served as directors, writers, and actors in the film, blurring the lines between music and visual storytelling. The film was initially broadcast on British television on Boxing Day, December 26, in 1967, filling a time slot traditionally reserved for family entertainment. However, it received mixed reviews and puzzled many viewers due to its abstract and non-linear narrative. Despite the initial confusion and criticism, Magical Mystery Tour featured several classic Beatles songs, such as I Am the Walrus, The Fool on the Hill, and Penny Lane. These songs were brought to life visually through imaginative and often surreal sequences, showcasing the band's creativity and willingness to experiment with the medium. Over time, Magical Mystery Tour has been re-evaluated and is now considered a pioneering work that laid the groundwork for the concept of music videos and visual albums. The film's artistic and imaginative approach to combining music and visuals paved the way for future artists to explore the possibilities of storytelling through music on screen. Decades later, visual albums like Beyoncé's Lemonade and Kanye West's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy would draw inspiration from the Beatles' Magical Mystery Tour, demonstrating how this innovative project left a lasting impact on the way musicians use visuals to complement their music. In conclusion, the history of music videos before the era of music television is a fascinating journey that showcases the gradual evolution of combining music and visuals as a means of artistic expression and promotion. Before MTV revolutionized the industry in the 1980s, several key precursors and milestones contributed to the development of music videos. Theatrical shorts and soundies. Early 20th century short films and soundies provided brief musical performances on film, laying the foundation for the visual representation of music. Promotional films. In the 1950s and 1960s, artists began creating promotional films to accompany their songs, setting the stage for more elaborate music videos. TV variety shows. Musical performances on television variety shows offered a platform for artists to showcase their music visually, even if these performances were not widely distributed. Concept videos. Some artists in the late 1960s and early 1970s experimented with conceptual music videos, introducing more artistic and abstract elements to the medium. Experimental films. Avant-garde filmmakers explored the fusion of visuals and music, influencing the artistic direction of future music videos. Scopitones in Europe. In Europe, scopitones, jukebox-style films, allowed audiences to watch performances by popular artists, enhancing the music experience with vibrant visuals. The Beatles' Magical Mystery Tour. The Beatles' pioneering work in creating a surreal musical film with their album, Magical Mystery Tour, demonstrated the potential of combining music and visual storytelling. While these early forms of music videos were not as widely accessible or influential as what would come with MTV, they laid the groundwork for the explosion of music videos as a cultural and artistic phenomenon in the 1980s and beyond. MTV's arrival marked a turning point, transforming music videos into a mainstream and indispensable part of the music industry. Today, music videos continue to be a powerful medium for artistic expression, storytelling, and the promotion of music in the digital age. Thanks for watching. Request you to subscribe the channel.